Chapter 875, Mummy. 7 Pinster Street. Leonard Mitchell came to his desk and unfolded a piece of paper. He then picked up a fountain pen and lowered his wrist in preparation to write. However, just as he dipped a dark blue spot onto the paper, his fountain pen paused. He attempted to move his wrist in order to write a few times, but all his attempts ended up stopping due to hesitation. He raised his wrist, lowered the fountain pen, and repeated this action again and again. Finally, he froze his wrist in midair. Puh! Leonard threw down his fountain pen, crumpled the piece of paper, and accurately threw it into the trash can. At 160 Birkeland Street, Klein received a thin letter from one of Miss Messenger Rionette Tinker's heads. He felt the weight in his hands, and only when his spiritual intuition didn't send him any warnings did he tear it open and retrieve the letter inside. There was only one page, and on it were 2 lines of text written in neat, beautiful handwriting. I have something that will require your help. Let's discuss it in detail, face to face. Sharon. So it's Miss Sharon. Klein had his questions answered as he took out a gold coin and did a simple divination in front of Rionette Tinker. Then, he took out another piece of paper and wrote one word. Tonight. After he folded the letter, he asked Miss Messenger as he handed it to her, "Can you still locate her?" If it wasn't possible, he planned on giving her Sharon's mailing address. Hillston Borough, 126 Guard Street, Ma'am Mariam. Yes, one of Rionette Tinker's blonde, red-eyed heads gave an answer. The head then opened its mouth and bit down on the letter. After Miss Messenger vanished from the room, Klein immediately held a ritual, planning to bring creeping hunger back to the real world from above the gray fog. He then planned on traveling to the various archipelagos in search of a lucky pirate. Creeping hunger hadn't been sealed yet, so it still required feeding once a day. All Klein could do was barely use it, feeding it whenever he needed to use it. He would then throw it back above the gray fog when the next feeding time was at hand. He wasn't planning on making up for the difference. If creeping hunger dares to make a fuss about it, I'll feed it mushrooms. After ending the ritual and clearing up the scene, Klein wore the thin, human-skinned glove, turning his body translucent until he vanished from his spot. He had his dinner, and after waiting for creeping hunger to finish its howling above the gray fog, Klein went to retrieve it by using the excuse of having an upset stomach to enter the bathroom. He then used this opportunity to teleport to the area outside the Bravehearts bar in the Backland Bridge area. During this process, he had already changed his appearance, turning into the black-haired, mustached, and bespectacled detective, Sherlock Moriarty. Bending his back and rolling up his pant legs, Klein gave a self-deprecating laugh. He lowered his hat and nudged open the heavy wooden door to step into the bar. After asking the bartender, he held a cup of Southville beer and went to billiard room 3, where he knocked on the locked door. Knock, knock, knock. Amidst the rhythmic knock, the door creaked open a tiny gap. The red-eyed Ian peeped his head out before breaking out into a smile. "Sir, please come on in." As the weather was turning warm, he no longer wore his old coat. Instead, he wore a simple linen shirt. Klein nodded with a smile and quickly entered the billiard room, where he took in the surroundings almost instantly. Merrick, with his hair a little messy, was wearing a white shirt, black vest, and black pants. He was holding onto a cue stick and had his back bent to play billiards. Perhaps having a deep impression of causing chaos for Sherlock Moriarty, he didn't summon his zombies to play cards with him. "Long time no see," Klein greeted first. Meanwhile, Sharon, with her small black bonnet and black, regal gown, appeared beside the billiard table, sitting on a high stool. "Good evening, ma'am." Klein moved his gaze over and bowed with a smile. Sharon seemed to float up as she stood up before raising the hem of her skirt to do a slight bow as a polite response. As for Merrick, he lowered his cue stick and said in a gruff voice, "From the looks of it, you're still in Backland." His face was as pale as ever, but the evil look in his brown eyes had lessened significantly. It seemed to be evidence of the effective temperance he had in recent times. It was apparent that his acquisition of the Scarlet Lunar Corona prevented him from almost breaking down on every full moon, so much so that he didn't need to frequently switch to new types of sedatives. Klein didn't directly answer Merrick. Instead, he walked to the billiard table and put down his beer. Smiling, he said, "I'm very sorry. I was planning to sell a Wraith Beyonder characteristic to you, but unfortunately it was lost." Sharon's blue eyes didn't move, nor did she probe for a reason. All she asked was a simple, "Are you all right?" She knew that the Wraith Beyonder characteristic Sherlock Moriarty mentioned belonged to Admiral of Blood Center. And he was also Sherlock Moriarty's marionette. By losing the Wraith Beyonder characteristic, it also meant the loss or destruction of his marionette. This was a significant loss for such a Beyonder. "I'm still all right. At least I didn't suffer any harm," Klein said with a sighing smile. "No wonder I didn't see Center this time," Merrick muttered in enlightenment. Merrick and Miss Sharon don't seem too bothered about the lack of that Wraith Beyonder characteristic. They have other means or methods to acquire one. Klein sharply grasped this point and switched to asking, "Is there something this time?" Merrick immediately glanced at Ian. The staid teenager didn't ask further as he quickly left the billiard room and closed the door. Sharon's doll-like face didn't show any emotion as she allowed Merrick to speak. "Tomorrow, there will be a ship from the southern continent arriving in Pritz Harbor. It is intimately tied to the Lone Army. This ship carries with it treasure and relics plundered from the Star Highlands, Paz Valley, and Hagenti Plains. Among them is a mummy. It's the 19th king of the ancient Hagenti Plains, Tutanses II. The southern continent's original language didn't stem from ancient Phaeacian. It had its own structure. In the ancient Highlander language, king also has the special term, Khedive. It was translated by Emperor Roselle as pharaoh. It's a mystery what he was thinking. Also, mummy was named by him too. In short, the meaning of pharaoh is the son of God, king of humans. Tutanses II was once a high-sequence Beyonder. However, after his death, the corresponding characteristic was taken away, leaving only his corpse behind to be made into a mummy. To other Beyonders, this is a material filled with spirituality, an excellent choice for creating a zombie. But to us, it has another meaning, a very important meaning. Our goal this time is to obtain that Tutanses II mummy. Another meaning? The corpse of a high-sequence Beyonder without any Beyonder characteristic. Apart from using it as a material, there's another meaning to it. Klein's heart stirred as he suddenly thought of Ma'am Hermit's request to purchase a drop of mythical creature blood. Could it be the ritual requirement to go from sequence 5 Wraith to sequence 4 Puppet? Miss Sharon already has the formula and has digested the Wraith potion. From the way she acts, she's practically acting as a Wraith all the time. Who knows, she might have digested it a long time ago. However, when we were in the underground ruin talking to the evil spirit, it was evident that she didn't possess the puppet potion formula. Yes, everyone has their own circles. It's not strange for her to be able to obtain it. Klein swept his gaze at Sharon while in thought, but he failed to discover any obvious changes from before. She was still more like a doll than a living person. However, she didn't show any signs of being even darker and creepier. Sharon silently sat there and watched Sherlock Moriarty and Merrick intently, listening into their conversation. If it's just a high-sequence mummy without a Beyonder characteristic, the level of protection can't be too high. Just the two of you shouldn't find it difficult to snatch it away. Klein raised a suspicion. From his point of view, a sequence 5 Beyonder could be considered quite a powerhouse. Unless the ship had a demigod escorting it, it was very difficult for Beyonders at the same level to put up any effective resistance if her target was solely a mummy. After all, there were too many items the Beyonder guards had to look out for. Furthermore, they might be scattered in different cabins due to the different means of storage. This time, it was Sharon's turn to provide the explanation. She used her succinct manner of speech as usual. "We're worried that it's a trap the Rose School of Thought is using to target us. If there's nothing, 1,000 pounds. If there's something, we will be in charge of drawing attention while you take away the mummy. Depending on the level of danger, it will range from 5,000 to 10,000 pounds. "I see." Klein didn't immediately reply as he thought and asked, "Do you know of spirit world plunderers?" A wraith was also a type of Beyonder who could effectively move through the spirit world. Sharon nodded slightly and said, I can use the cash and the relevant information about spirit world plunderers as payment. Klein tersely acknowledged. I'll consider it. I'll write to you before midnight. As an excellent seer, he would head above the gray fog to confirm the level of danger regardless of what it was. However, he could confirm that this was definitely not a trap targeted at him, since he had no need for a mummy. All right, Sharon replied with a deadpan expression. Klein didn't immediately bid them farewell as he walked to the door and informed Ian to enter. He then asked, "Are there any news worth taking note of recently?" Ian thought for a moment and mentioned pieces of information that were relatively important. Someone is trying to find out about the organization that believes in the Fool. Klein was somewhat surprised as he asked with a smile, a young man with black hair and green eyes. He suspected that it was Leonard Mitchell. Ian shook his head. No, black hair and black eyes. Some mister from the Aurora Order. Klein considered for a moment before asking, "Can you draw who it is?" Ian was taken aback before he said, in a self-deprecating manner, "You might never be able to recognize him if that's the case." At this moment, Sharon said, "I can help you." All right. Ian first heaved a sigh of relief before following the instructions to prepare a rather simple ritual. Then, his body trembled as he drew a sketch while being possessed by a wraith. It was a young man with curly black hair, black eyes, a wide forehead, and a thin face while wearing a monocle. Ammon. Blasphemer Ammon.